Hello and welcome to HCB. Where I am back after a few weeks off due to being incredibly busy / technical difficulties. I am back, and I thought, well, rather than do the traditional review show for week 17, I thought to make up for the weeks I have not been here, I'm going to do a general recap of the last 4 match weeks that I have missed, go through how the teams have gone on and where they lead to after this. Now the first team we are going to be looking at. We're going to be doing these alphabetical order. The first one then is Arsenal, and well, what an interesting team to be starting off with. Arsenal have had such a weird time. But I should point out, I did my week 14 predictions. That's the last video I uploaded. I did that like a couple of hours before the Eintracht Frankfurt game against Arsenal. So I made those predictions before Unai Emery got sacked. Since Unai Emery's got sacked, Arsenal have played 4 games in the Premier League. They have drawn against Norwich at home away 2-2. They've lost to Brighton at home 2-1. They have beaten West Ham away 3-1, and they've lost to Man City at home 3-0, leaving them in 10th place. Then, well, what a depressing time it is to be an Arsenal fan. Believe me, as a West Ham fan, it's not much better being us. But we'll come to that. But Arsenal, I mean, I'll be perfectly honest. As someone that saw the West Ham Arsenal game live, Arsenal weren't good. They were not good in that game. They, especially for the first 60 minutes, what they did was they didn't have a shot on target. I'm pretty sure. What happened was they played abysmal for 60 minutes. We just played worse for 30. So that's how they managed to win that one. Other than that, they've drawn to an abject Norwich side. They've lost to Man City and Brighton home. And they also made Kevin De Bruyne look like the second coming of Jesus. And I don't mean Gabriel. So yeah, I mean, it's very, very concerning time for Arsenal. They need to get a manager now. Just Freddie Ljungberg's doing his best. All right, he's doing his best. But this is Arsenal, I think we were talking about here. Arsenal need to be in the upper echelons of the table once again. And, you know, I was expecting them to be challenging for Champions League this year with the likes of Chelsea and Man United potentially dropping off. They're the ones actually dropping off. They're the only one out of the supposed top 6 not actually in the top 6, which is very concerning. I think what's also concerning is that just their away form, despite it actually being better than its home form since the last time we covered them, they've still only won 2 games all season away from home, and also have only kept 1 clean sheet all season, that being on the opening day against Newcastle. So they need to sort out the defence. The Arsenal this weekend will be playing Everton in the early kickoff at Goodison Park. So we'll have to see how they get on there. We now move on to our next team, and it is Aston Villa. Aston Villa have had a very unfortunate 4 match weeks, not winning any of their games, drawing against Man United at Old Trafford, but then losing to Chelsea, Leicester and Sheffield United in consecutive weeks. Admittedly, that is quite a hard schedule, and Manchester United, but they got a draw against Manchester United, so that makes up for it. This leaves Villa in 17th, and to be fair, I think it's incredibly harsh that they're in 17th, because they are playing well. It's hard to judge them against sides like Leicester, Sheffield United, teams that are on form, because they are not expected to win those games. So anything they do get out of them is a bonus. I think the issue they are having is teams around them are getting results from those games. If you look at the sides above them, Everton, West Ham, Bournemouth, directly above them, they have all beaten Chelsea in recent weeks. Now, I know that doesn't say much about Chelsea, but you get what I mean. They're not taking advantage of potentially they're not getting results against teams higher up in the league, which they need to be doing. The only 3 wins coming against Norwich, Brighton, and Newcastle this season. All of them are currently in the bottom half. So they need to get some wins in the top half, and they also need to get some more away wins. They've only managed 1 away win all season, that being the 5-1 win against Norwich. While impressive, actually, was it impressive? It was against Norwich. We'll say it's impressive just to help Villa's spirits. Let's say it's impressive. You know, they need more. They need more, and I'd like to see Villa stay up. I think they still have a good chance. They're not in the relegation zone, which is something that I don't think they have been all season. I think they were at the start of the season, maybe. Correct me if I'm wrong. They might be at the start of the season. If you care that much and are actually watching this Villa section, correct me if they're actually in the were bottom half, but they haven't been for ages. They've just been hovering above it, which would concern me if I was Dean Smith or any Villa fans. This weekend, Villa travel to actually host Southampton in the Premier League on the Saturday, so a big game for both sides there. We now move on to Bournemouth, and they've had a very, very iffy 4 match weeks. They lost their first three, losing 3-2 to Spurs, 1-0 to Crystal Palace, both away, and 3-0 at home to Liverpool. But then they somehow managed to pull off a massive upset, beating Chelsea 1-0 at Stamford Bridge. This coming after 5 match weeks where they hadn't got a single point. Now, if I was Bournemouth, despite the Chelsea win, I would be concerned because they've slipped down the table massively, and this is usually the time where Eddie Howe has Bournemouth in a bit of trouble. They usually start off great, and I'd say they had done to an extent this season as well, but then they slip off, and they don't get anywhere near challenging for Europa League as they might have hoped for, especially last year. But B, they put themselves in a relegation fight. Maybe not till the end of the season. They rarely ever do put them in there until the end of the season, but they put them in there for a period of time, which doesn't help the morale at Bournemouth at any point during the season. It doesn't help any team. If you're in a relegation battle at any point, your morale in the team, it only makes it worse. Actually, that's not true. Some teams thrive on it, and you could say maybe Bournemouth are one of them. I'm not convinced. I think the main issue is their goals. Their goals conceded since they managed 3 back-to-back clean sheets. They have conceded at least since they managed 3 back-to-back clean sheets, in their 5 losses, they conceded at least 2 in 4 of them. Obviously, they kept a clean sheet against Chelsea, so that might help their defence's confidence. But other than that, it's been quite poor from Bournemouth. They move on and they play Burnley this weekend at home at 3 o'clock. Speaking of Burnley, they're not next because I've just realised Brighton are the next side. That shows you how you can tell I'm trying to remember the order that the Premier League teams are in alphabetical order. Brighton have had to be fair, quite good few weeks. They lost to Liverpool away 2-1, but they ended up beating Arsenal away from home. And then taking draws against Wolves and Crystal Palace. One thing I will say about Brighton, you should point out this puts them in 13th spot, which is a decent position considering they're potentially fighting relegation at the start of the season, and also new manager. You never know how they were going to get on. In regards to performances, I think they just need they sort of bring it upon themselves. The last 2 results easily could have been wins. The Wolves one, they conceded a goal in a sloppy fashion to make it a draw, and then they also against Crystal Palace there was 60 minutes where Palace didn't even have a shot, and then all of a sudden they equalised, and then by the end of the game they've got 11 shots. So I don't know what happened there. Those are the kind of games Brighton can win. They can win, and they could easily be on a run of 3 consecutive wins. They just haven't been able to be clinical enough or just sharp enough at moments in the game, and it's moments that are causing Brighton, not the entire performance themselves, but moments that are meaning they are not pushing higher in the table. Brighton move on from these 4 weeks, and they play Sheffield United in the next game at 3 o'clock at the Amex. We now move on to Burnley, and Burnley have had literally a 50-50. They've almost had quite a poor one overall, despite the most recent result being a 1-0 win against Newcastle. They lost their 3 games before that, with Crystal Palace losing 2-0 at home, Man City losing 4-1 at home, Spurs then losing 5-0 away. Combined, they conceded 11 goals, only scoring 2 in those 4 games. Stretch, meaning they dropped down to 12th, which isn't a bad place for Burnley to be by any stretch of the imagination. But considering the start they had at the start, considering the overall start they had in the season, they would like to potentially improve on that. Especially what would concern them is their away form. At home, they've been very good. They've won 5 of their 9 games, but away from home, they've only won 1 game, and that being against Watford. So does it really count? I mean, it does count because it's in the Premier League, but you get my point. So I think the issue comes with the defence is obviously an issue. They've conceded. They will either keep a clean sheet or concede a lot of goals. That is the issue with Burnley at the moment, and there's no middle ground, which doesn't help anyone with Burnley defenders because in their fantasy team, because you take a 50-50 punt. Knowing me, if I ever put a Burnley defender on my team, I would get it would be one of those weeks where they conceded 5 goals. But that's just my luck. Burnley. Burnley after this move on and they play Bournemouth away from home at the Vitality Stadium. Both teams looking for wins after good results at the weekend. We now move on to Chelsea and well, been a very interesting 4 weeks for them. By that I mean, what the hell has happened? Because first of all, they lost to us, and we'll get to that when it comes to the West Ham review. But they did beat Palace at home, not Palace, Villa at home. But then they lost to Everton 3-1 at Goodison, and they lost to Bournemouth at Stamford Bridge. I do not know what's happened. They've to Chelsea since they went on like a 6-game win run, and now they've dropped down to fourth. Actually, I don't think I think they were fourth when I last did this, but still. I don't know what's happened really. I'm aware Abraham was injured for the West Ham game, so that might have affected him. But since then, he has been fit, so should have really put an impact in. I'm aware the positive is they are through in the Champions League. They have won. They beat Lille since last time we did this. But I think this is a key moment for Frank Lampard because they've lost to West Ham, Everton, and Bournemouth, three teams that when they played them were drastically out of form. West Ham hadn't won in their last 7. Everton had just got a new manager in after conceding 5, conceding 7, in 2 games, and Bournemouth had lost their previous 4. So you take that all in, and that should be 3 games they're winning. They should be coming out of this with 4 games where they should have won, and only 1 loss in their last 11 games. That would be an incredible run. Instead, they faltered, which is a concern for Frank Lampard. They need to improve, and they've got a chance to improve this week. It's a must-win game. It's a big game against Spurs at the White Hart Lane Stadium, at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Sorry, I know Spurs fans want to call it that. It is the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It's not White Hart Lane. But I mean, what a game! What a game for both sides, especially considering the new managerial appointment. Is it even new now? He's been there a month. The relatively new managerial appointment of Jose Mourinho. We now move on to Crystal Palace, and their 4 games are pretty much like. Actually, no, I was about to. Never mind. They've actually done very well. They have not lost any of their 4 games since the last time they played. They beat Burnley and Bournemouth home and away and home respectively. Then drew against Watford, and then then drew against Brighton at home. I think the only issue is, especially with those last 2 games, slightly concerning. I think for Crystal Palace because Watford away. I'm aware both sides are the lowest scoring in the league. I'm aware of that, but you should be beating Watford, especially on the form they're in. I think there is a certain rule. If you're in last place, I know any away game is hard, but if you're in last place, you should be if you're playing last place, you should be thinking, right, we need to win this game. And Palace probably thought, yeah, we need to win this game. They just didn't execute it. And to be fair, goals have been an issue all season. Even in these run of fixtures, they've only scored 4. But they've also only conceded 1. So that is why they're doing so well. That's why they're currently 9th. And to be fair, their defence is I believe, one of the best in the league. It's very similar to Sheffield United. They don't play like Sheffield United, but they were very stubborn. And I'll be honest, I'll actually go back to that Sheffield United game, where it was like one of the first games I saw them live. They were abysmal. Since then, they've improved drastically. And you've got to give credit to Roy Hodgson and Palace. Since then, Palace move on and they will play Newcastle away from home. And if you were looking for goals, spoilers for my predictions, I wouldn't go to this game. I'm not saying Palace are going to lose, but just don't expect too many goals. We now move on to Everton, and what a 4 match weeks they have had since then. I mean, I'll be honest, they've had one of the hardest runs and will continue to have one of the hardest runs in the Premier League. They lost to Leicester 2-1 with a last-gasp Iheanacho goal, which would have broken Everton hearts. They got thrashed in the Merseyside derby 5-2. They beat Chelsea. Marco Silva then gets sacked, Then they beat Chelsea at home with Duncan Ferguson in charge. And then they draw away at Old Trafford against Man United, where they probably should have won the game. So what? I mean, what a weird turn of events for Everton. I am obviously, as of recording, I believe the news is Carlo Ancelotti is having talks with Everton, and to be fair play Everton if you get him because he's an incredible manager. And I believe he's very underrated. I think, despite I know he hasn't won many trophies, but for Everton, I know they similar to West Ham. I think they've got a bit of a curse. They can never really push on. Similar to West Ham. I mean, they're 16th at the moment. They are still in a bit of a relegation battle. If people are saying West Ham are, they are. They're lower than us. All right. Look, at the moment, Duncan Ferguson's clearly put some passion into the Everton players. He got them playing well. 4 points out of his in return for against Chelsea and Man United is no mean feat. So it's incredible that he's managed that. What he will need to do is get them potentially playing away well if he has the time. They've only won one game away all season. Uh, but overall, Everton definitely seeing an improvement under Duncan Ferguson. How long he's going to be there, we do not. I have no idea. But it'd be nice if he could get enough time to potentially turn it around even more. And they've got another good opportunity this week, playing Arsenal in the early kickoff at Goodison Park. We now move on to Leicester, and well, they've really just kept on going since we last saw them. Obviously, I'm aware they've drawn their most recent game against Norwich at home. That was not a good result. But before then, they beat Villa 4-1, they beat Watford 2-0, and they beat Everton 2-1. Admittedly, they are not the hardest teams to beat for Leicester on the form they're in, based on league positioning, but you still got to beat them, as they found out with Norwich, not always guaranteed. So, you still got to beat them. They managed that. And they also have maintained their unbeaten home record since the start of the season, which I think is kind of a bit under the radar. The fact they are still unbeaten at home in the King Power. I mean, Leicester are in second place, and I'll be honest, there's a very good chance they could finish above City this year if they maintain this form of just not losing. They haven't lost since the 5th of October, which coincidentally was the last time I had hope for West Ham actually pushing for Europe this year. But yeah, I mean, what more is to say with Leicester? Other than Jamie Vardy's doing incredible things for my fantasy team at the moment, which is great news. But yeah, what more is there to say? I'm aware they drew against Norwich, but they should be able to breeze that off quite easily. So what Leicester need to do, just keep on doing what they've been doing, and they can easily. Obviously, they're not going to. I don't think they're going to challenge for Liverpool's title, but they can easily. I think they're definitely in the Champions League this year. I'm going to put my neck on the line and say they're definitely in Champions League this year. How far up the table? Where in the table? Sorry, they're going to finish in the Champions League. We do not know. Leicester this week play a massive game against Manchester City at the Etihad. What a statement that could be if they potentially win that. That would be incredible. Speaking of Man City, they are after Liverpool in the alphabet. I do apologise. I knew I was going to get some of these wrong, order-wise. I mean, Liverpool have pretty much left off, picked up where they left off. They have managed some very good wins this season. But I mean, of course, they've kept the winning run going since the last time they've won. They won 4 games out of 4. And they've at the moment, obviously, they were in tonight. They're playing a cup game against Aston Villa, and they're going on to the Club World Cup later. The games they've won since last. So 2-0 against Watford, 3-0 against Bournemouth, thrashing Everton 5-2 in the Merseyside derby, and of course 2-1 win against Brighton. I say of course, I mean you probably forgot about that, but they did beat Brighton 2-1. Again, similar to Leicester, where else do they go? They're 10 points clear at the top of the table. That potentially will be reduced to 7 this week because they are not playing. They were meant to play West Ham, but because of the Club World Cup, that game's being changed. Rescheduled was the word I was looking for. But yeah, so when Liverpool get back into the Premier League, they're gonna subject to potentially being tired from the Club World Cup, which is maybe a potential issue. You'd hope they'd avoid that. But Liverpool, I think, can easily just go on and comfortably win the league. Look, at the end of the day, Liverpool are Liverpool. So they have had big leagues before in the league and messed them up. And they've had them a lot later in the season than December. So you never know. But Liverpool would have to do something drastic to mess this up. They've only, however many, 17 games in, they've only drawn 1, they've won 16, not lost any. This could easily be, or I should point out, a season where Liverpool do go the entire season without losing games. They only lost 1 last year, and they seem slightly better overall. So you never know. Now we move on to Man City, and they've had a very, very sort of depressing depressing time overall because yes, they've beaten Arsenal and Burnley away from home in the last 4 games, but they have also drawn with Newcastle and lost the Manchester derby at home, pretty much surrendering their title challenges. I should point out, they have now lost as many games as Manchester United, which, considering City are meant to be miles ahead, that isn't a good start. Obviously, City have won a lot more, but still, the losses speak for themselves. I mean, it's almost a case of any big team they've come up against, most of the time they've lost. I mean, they've lost to Norwich. I've just said big team and then said Norwich. That's not a good example. The Liverpool big game they've lost. Man United big game they've lost. I'm aware they beat Chelsea, but that's the only exception to the rule. I will say, I do want to give a shout out to Kevin De Bruyne. I know I made a joke earlier about this, but he is, in my opinion, the best player in the Premier League. Just the way he carved open Arsenal. I know it's Arsenal, but just the way he performed was absolutely incredible. And if they can mount a challenge for second, I'd say, definitely guaranteed. I think that's the minimum Pep wants at this stage. Actually, no, that's a lie. The minimum Pep wants is the title. He just won't admit that he probably will only get second this year. But what a game, as I said, for Leicester. Man City do play Leicester in the late kickoff on Saturday. A lot of people are watching that game, and this can be definitely a game that can make or break City's season, equally as much as the Liverpool game, I'd say, at this point. We now move on to the other side of Manchester United, and what an and they are another team where they haven't actually lost a game. Yes, they have drawn against Villa and Everton at home. They aren't good results. But beating Spurs at home and Man City away, they are good results. So I will say you've got to give credit for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer for that, for just he kept going. He's still at the job, and he's doing a damn good one at the moment, I'd say. Actually, that's not true. They did, despite winning those games, they have still not looked the best side overall. Marcus Rashford, I will give credit for. He is now improving again, scoring goals, crucial goals for Manchester United once again after a bit of a drought. But you got to think how much longer Ole Gunnar Solskjaer will be in the job, despite the results. And I still don't think Man United fans want him there. That is my personal opinion, despite the results. Because they've moved up to 6th. They have moved up to 6th. You've got to give them credit for that. But this is Manchester United, and how long will they wait how long will the board wait? How long will the fans wait until they are desperate for top 4 football? Because they're not getting it under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I don't think they're not getting it. How long do they have to wait until the title challenge? Because their main 2 rivals are the 2 teams everyone thought could win the league. How depressing is that, considering 10 years ago Man United were the team to beat and the most annoying team in the world? I mean, they are still the most annoying team in the world, but for slightly different reasons. So Man United will go on and they will play a game where they surely should win against bottom place Watford at Vicarage Road on Sunday. We now move on to Newcastle. And just like themselves, Newcastle are probably the representation of their recent run. Average. Actually, that's a bit. It's a bit harsh. If you look at the points they've got, it's average. But it's a draw against City, an away win against Sheffield United, which is the first team to. No, it isn't. Ignore me. A home win against Southampton, and then a 1-0 loss away at Burnley. Overall, they've had a very solid few games, and the Newcastle fans are starting to now want to see Bruce. I mean, they're 11th in the table, and considering, like most people, I thought they were going to be in a relegation battle. And believe me, as someone that knows a Newcastle fan, I do keep getting reminded how they are above us. I mean, he doesn't watch this, but yes, I'm aware. And let's just wait and see. Hopefully, we'll eventually get back above them. But they're almost at a point where they have now won as many games as they've lost. They've won 6, lost 7. Overall, that is a very good record for the start of the season. And one thing that still needs to be pointing out: we are in December, and Joelinton has not scored since the 25th of August. That is concerning. I think overall, Newcastle's attacking line of Almiron, St. Maxim, and Joelinton have have scored 2 goals all season still. That is very concerning. The one thing that's holding them up is the fact that they are very good at set pieces and the fact that the defenders know how to score a lot more than the attackers. Newcastle will move on to play Crystal Palace at St James's Park on Saturday. We now move on to Norwich. And this. Well, there's a slight improvement. They've got 2 points. Admittedly, they are coming off a very good result away at Leicester, and they did draw against Arsenal in the first game that we saw them in. But they've also lost to Southampton away and Sheffield United at home 2-1. Now, if there's one thing to take credit for, positivity for Norwich fans, is the fact that they are not losing by as much. They only lost by 1. Before, they were losing by 2 or minimum every week. So you can take credit, you can take courage in that. Everything else, you can't. Actually, no, that's not true. Pukki's scoring again. It's just a shame your defence is still conceding. I mean, it is putting them in 19th. Norwich's season, as I've said many times, is going how I expected, which is their attack not clicking and their defence playing as well as they do in the Championship, which is not very well considering they conceded a lot in the Championship. Norwich move on to a game against Wolves at 3 o'clock at Carrow Road. We'll see how they get on. Don't hold your breath. We now move on to Southampton, and similarly, they've had a shocking few weeks. They've improved. They've got their first 2 home wins of the season, both against Norwich and Watford, which, I know I've made jokes saying Norwich and Watford do they even count. They are must-win games for Southampton. All right, if you're in the relegation battle, you need to beat anyone, and Watford and Norwich are anyone. But at the same time, they've also lost 2-1 away at Newcastle and 1-0 at home to West Ham. Both games you think you could push on and at least get a point maybe in both to push on in the season, but it does mean they're still 18th. I'm not sure whether people truly believe yet Southampton are going down. We do not know yet. And it's just from the fact that they've kept surviving, clinging on last couple of seasons. And they're almost like the Wigan. Do you remember Wigan in 2010 to 2012? They would always be in the relegation battle for so long. Then Roberto Martinez would actually start teaching them tactics. And then they'd actually survive in like 17th or 16th. Ironically, the one year where they didn't stay up, they won the FA Cup. So I was like, we get to play. We are playing in the Championship, but we're also playing in the Europa League, so it's not too bad. Anyway, back to Southampton because this is the team that's on the screen. Yeah, so Southampton need to improve defensively. They're still, relatively shaky despite conceding less goals. And speaking of goals, they need to score some. They desperately need to score some. They just haven't been doing so. And also, they need to find a way to keep a clean sheet, going back to the defensive side, because they haven't kept a clean sheet since the 14th of September, which is a damning stat. And Ralph Hasenhüttl as well, I'm amazed he's still in the job, because since the Leicester result, where he could have easily gone, they've only managed the Watford and Norwich wins. In total, they managed 7 points from 7 games, which isn't. It's not the worst turnover, but considering the opponents as well, you could suggest that they should have got more. We now move on to Sheffield United, and they have continued on in a similar way to where they left off. They drew with Wolves away from home. They lost to Newcastle 2-0, which was not good. Was not very good, but they then bounced back by beating Norwich and Villa relatively comfortably. I know they had to come back from Norwich, but it was still quite comfortable in back-to-back games, putting them in 7th place. I mean, currently in a spot where I'd consider it Europa League, just because usually it goes to. I know it's not guaranteed Europa League, but you get my point. And I will say this does continue their run of still being unbeaten away from home. They have only managed 2 wins away from home, but they've drawn the rest. And it's, that fighting ability that means they do so well. If you don't lose games, you do well. I sound like Michael Owen there, but you get what I mean. If you manage to still draw games, you're progressing, you're keeping an unbeaten run going. It's still very impressive. And Sheffield United, they just need to keep going in this form, and they will be potentially challenging for Europa League. We're 17 games in now. There's a very good chance they could be challenging. Next game they move on to is Brighton away from home. We now move on to Tottenham Hotspurs, and they've had a very overall a positive last 4 games. They beat Bournemouth 3-2. They did lose to Man United in the Jose Mourinho derby, which probably isn't great. But they then bounced back by beating Burnley 5-0 at home, and then getting a last gasp winner against Wolves away from home, securing their second away win of the season. It seems like they can only beat away teams that begin with W. So, I mean, the other one's Watford. What do you expect? The other one's Watford. What do you think's going to happen? I say that they drew the previous game between them, but yeah, no, you still get the point. Spurs, it does look like they're improving under Mourinho drastically. I know, so it's very impressive. And they are up to fifth now, considering they were in the bottom half when he took over. It's very good. And look, on the form Chelsea are, they are definitely still within a shout of getting into that top four. I think overall, probably fans would be surprised if Spurs didn't get in the top four. Just from their qualities. But there is a very good chance they couldn't get in the top four this year. There's a very good chance they could get in the top four this year. That's sort of the effect. And I will say, you've got to give credit where credit's due. Mourinho hasn't played boring football since he has taken over. He has actually pressed teams, and some of the goals the Spurs have scored, especially the ones against Burnley, were absolutely incredible. And I hate saying that as a West Ham fan, but annoyingly, they were absolutely incredible. Spurs will move on to another big game. And speaking of Chelsea, they move on to play Chelsea, where they could really this is a statement game for them. They need to show that they are this Tottenham Hotspur of old, and they need to show they are back in title hunt. We go from one side who has done very well to a side that has done incredibly shockingly in Watford. They have lost to Southampton, they've lost to Leicester, and they've lost to Liverpool. And they've also drawn to Crystal Palace. But, it doesn't really work with the team. They have sacked their manager, I will say, since they sacked their manager after losing to Southampton. They brought in Nigel Pearson, his first Premier League job since Leicester, and his first Premier League, and his first English job in football since Derby. I will say, give Nigel Pearson credit. They did look good against Liverpool. It's just for some reason it looked like the ball went. It looked like the ball turned to solid brick as soon as Ismaila Sarr actually tried to strike it, which is annoying for all the fans. Which is annoying for them because they actually created a few chances against Liverpool and could have easily actually come out there with a draw on another day. They're not gonna. Their season wasn't gonna make or break if they lost to Liverpool or not. But overall, they are still last, and similar to the situation where they were last a couple months ago, they need to win just no matter who they're playing. And it's just a scenario. Norwich and Southampton are also in the scenario, but all of them need to win no matter who they're playing, and that it's so key. It's so key to do that. They especially need to win a home game because there ain't home games in. They haven't won one. It's very concerning. Overall, they've only got 4 points at home all season, which is not a good record. They are playing at home this weekend, though, against Manchester United, and, it doesn't matter what form Man United's in. They need to win that game. I'm not saying they will win that game. I'm just saying they need to. We now move on to my team, West Ham, not really great, is it? It's an improvement. It's an improvement. We started this 4 weeks by beating Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. We then went on to lose 2-0 to Wolves and 3-1 to Arsenal at home. But then we finished it off by beating Southampton away from home. A lot of away games we've had. A lot of away games recently. But overall, it's not. It hasn't been a good turnover. And shockingly, we played Southampton. What have I been calling for most of the time? I'm aware I haven't uploaded recently, so maybe I haven't said this as much on the channel as I have said to my friends. But I've been calling for 2 up top, and look what happens. We play 2 up top, and shock result, we actually do well. It's almost like it's so flipping obvious we should have done this ages ago. We are now, that result against Southampton means we climbed from 17th to 15th. Big gains, guys. Big gains. We've got some big gains. They still look. At the end of the day, if we can build on this Southampton momentum, we can build and just getting this structure. Because Sebastian Haller, especially, a clear example of someone that suits that structure better than the other one Pellegrini plays. If we keep to that structure. And we build on this. We beat our next games against Crystal Palace. It's not this week, but we beat our next opponent. Then we beat we just need to not lose. That is the key thing here. Like especially at the start of the season, we didn't play that good, but we didn't lose. We didn't lose, and what I mean by that is we drew, especially away from home. We had a record where we were unbeaten away from home for quite a while, due to the fact that we drew a lot of the games. Similar to Sheffield United now, but just by drawing them means you don't lose. You still gain positivity around the club, which is so key at the moment. Do I think Pellegrini? I still don't think will last till the end of the season, which I still think it's a question of when he gets sacked rather than if. Uh, do I think he's going to last at the end of 2019? The next game against Crystal Palace, we'll see. We are not playing this weekend. I've already mentioned Crystal Palace. We're not playing this weekend because we were meant to play Liverpool, but they are now. But because of the Club World Cup, that is being rescheduled. I'm not sure whether that's a blessing or a curse, to be perfectly honest. Because it's like, oh yeah, we have to wait to play Liverpool. We're going to play them twice in 2020, most likely. It's going to be fun, isn't it? Final team we're doing is Wolves, and Wolves have had a very 50-50 season. Not season. We're not doing season review. Don't be ridiculous. The last 4 games, they drew against Sheffield United. They beat West Ham 2-0. But then again, who hasn't? They lost. They drew against Brighton, but then their unbeaten run that spanned it back till September. 22nd of September came to an end with a 2-1 loss last minute against Spurs, and that was very annoying because admittedly I didn't put my predictions up this week, but I did predict 1-1 for the Spurs Wolves game, so very annoying. Damn you, Jan Vertonghen. Wolves overall have looked still very impressive. I mean, they comfortably beat Besiktas in the Europa League as well, so they're definitely a very good side still, and they're now 8th in the table, still challenging for Europe, and they can definitely still make a case. For getting into Europe over sides like Man United and Spurs, depending on the form they are in, and continuing on with the form they have been in, with the exception of the Spurs game. At the end of the day, still being compared, they are probably the anomaly to the Europa League rule. Usually, teams take a back seat in the Premier League, focus on the Europa League. Wolves are managing to do both. Not only did they relatively comfortably qualify out of their Europa League group, they're doing very well in the Premier League, which is very impressive. I will say one thing they do need to work on is the amount of wins to draws. They have won 5, drawn 9. Now, I know I've said not to lose games, but I think Wolves would probably like to win a few more than that. That concludes this week's video. I'm aware it's a bit long, but it's me reviewing 4 weeks, and to be fair, considering my review videos go just about 5 minutes shorter than this, I think it's quite impressive I've managed to cram everything in. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you like, share, and subscribe. Obviously, with the Christmas period, there's going to be a lot more videos. I will let you know about this, but there might be a couple of weeks where I don't do a review video. Like, I think that the Boxing Day games to the games of the weekend, I might not do a review video, just go straight to the prediction one where we'll mention about the other games. It's just so I can actually get the videos out, really. But I will let you know on that. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you on Thursday for the predictions.